Welcome back to the show. U.S. and Israeli forces carrying out fresh waves of strikes against Iran. It comes as President Trump says the U.S. military is postponing strikes on the regime's power plants after claiming the two sides held productive talks on ending the conflict. Steve Harrigan is in Armenia. He's near the border with Iran for an update. Hi, Steve.
Dana, President Trump announcing a 5-day pause on any U.S. attacks on Iran's infrastructure. Posting on social media, the president said, "I've instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants." Iran, for its part, has denied that there have been any direct negotiations with the U.S., and they've also threatened to retaliate against any strikes on their energy infrastructure. They said they would attack any and all energy plants across the Mideast, including the Barak nuclear power plant in the United Arab Emirates. The Revolutionary Guard posting a chilling note on state television saying, "Do not doubt that we will do this." Dana, back to you.
Steve, thank you so much.
So, Dana, we talked about this at the end of last week, and a lot of this information has changed over the weekend. But these were the military installations, in addition to the energy installations that were hit, or targeted anyway, by Iran. You had a refinery north of Tel Aviv, near Haifa. You had a refinery here on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, a long way away from Tehran. Just across the Strait of Hormuz in Kuwait, Qatar, and UAE. But that's just some of them, okay? So this is what we tried to do on this map. All these little different colored dots, all right? Red represents a plant, yellow is a port, green is storage, and blue is a field. And what I see here, well, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, all this is on the west side of the Strait of Hormuz, which essentially, it could be less than 100 miles for a drone or a missile launched by Iran to go ahead and target some of these energy facilities in these Gulf countries. This, however, is the thing to keep in mind. Strait of Hormuz, that choke point, 20% of the natural gas and the oil that comes out of that part of the world goes to Europe. Another 80% goes to Asia. So you see, it is the engine in a lot of ways for these countries around the world. General Jack Keane's with us now. And sir, good morning to you. Let's get caught up on this. It's great to have you on. We heard from the president last hour. If the U.S. were to take action against these power plants in Iran, basically knocking out the electricity for 92 million people, that would take the war to a next level. What can you add about the reports of communications and talks with senior officials in the Iranian government at this hour, General?
Well, I don't know what's taking place in terms of the negotiations. I do know that the likelihood of talking to someone is who they believe is a moderate, but most intel people regard that someone that they're talking to as another hardliner in the Iranian administration and part of the regime. I mean, listen, what we have seen in negotiations in the past is the Iranians are willing to promise something and then cheat, and lie. That is one of the reasons why we're in this in the first place, aren't we? Because we came to the realization there's no really dealing with this regime. And we have to take away their capabilities to attack us and do harm in the region. That is what this whole campaign is about. And we're well on our way to achieving all of that, Bill, to absolutely include plans to open up the Straits of Hormuz. There's no doubt we're going to open up the Straits of Hormuz because we're going to take control of it. And we'll be able to hold on to that reality over time. What we can't do is, through negotiations, open up the Straits of Hormuz, enter into some deal with the Iranians. Yeah, they'll back off, and then we'll end hostilities prematurely. And what happens as a result of that? One, they still have capability to attack us, even though that was our goal. Two, they can blackmail and use the Straits of Hormuz as hostage in the future. I think we're going to stay on path here. I have complete confidence that the American president, President Trump, knows what our plan is, knows how far along we are in achieving that plan, and that we can achieve that plan and achieve reality. If we're talking to this regime and some member in it who maybe is willing to undermine the rest of the regime and make a deal with us about what I would refer to as more terms of surrender, that's attractive. But if this is just another diplomatic effort for us to stop hostilities before we achieve our military objectives, that doesn't make any sense. I don't see our president succumbing to anything like that.
It's a very insightful answer. Sir, what did this announcement 2 hours ago about a 5-day delay mean to you?
Well, I think it's predicated on the fact that there's some kind of negotiations taking place. I never thought the power plant deal would actually stop their behavior that much, because the Mossad has blew up power plants in the past through the years. I mean, if we're trying to do something to gain some leverage over the regime in addition to the military capabilities we're displaying, I would tie up all of the Iranian export shipping that's coming through the Straits and deal with the countries it's going to, China, Russia, Pakistan, and India, and tell them, I got no choice but to stop this. And in other words, you're shutting down the Iranian trafficking through the Straits of Hormuz, and you go into those countries to put pressure on Iran to open the whole Straits of Hormuz as a result of it. To me, that's more attractive than dealing with power plants. But I'll leave it to the plans that are already in place here. I just know this, Bill. Our military objectives, we are achieving them, knocking them down one at a time, and the Israelis are as well. And we're in a very good place to achieve all of those objectives over time. And listen, no one's even thinking that this would go likely beyond 60 days. Can you imagine conducting a campaign in several weeks to achieve the military objectives that we have assigned to ourselves? It is condition-based. And it's the reality of those conditions that we're dealing with. The Straits of Hormuz are blocked. Okay, that's a condition that we're dealing with. And that will be opened up. That's a fact. Their ballistic missile program, longer range than what we had expected. This is the adversary taking a vote here. We adapt to that. And the answer to that is take all their ballistic missile programs down. And we're about the path of doing just that. Okay. We have to adapt to the enemy as well as the enemy trying to adapt to us.
Get it. Jack Keane, thank you, sir. Let's talk later in the week.
Great talking
I know we
Bill.
will. Maybe even later today or tomorrow. Jack Keane, thanks.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox News Patriot today. Click join to find out how.